Howdy folks and welcome back to the channel, welcome back to another tutorial episode of War in the East 2. Again, in this tutorial I wanted to cover briefly two topics which one of them is I found is really not explained at all in the manual, and the other one is mostly well explained, but there is one subchapter that really drove me nuts because it took me so long to get it. And I also wanted to thank one user in of the forum, Dark Horse 2, because he posted some very interesting pictures online. Briefly, the weather. Why is it important to understand the weather? Well, because the weather affects your air mission efficiencies, your ground movement, I mean the penalty in movement points that your units have to spend to move into enemy access, and also the ground combat efficiency. Um, the air mission efficiencies is quite intuitive, and we've seen this in the tutorial dedicated to the manual handling of air directives, where you could choose under which weather conditions your pilots should have executed those specific air missions. And basically, um, quite logically, the worse the weather conditions are in the air, and the higher is the chance of your planes suffering um, operational losses, which means that they can be damaged or they can be destroyed. And this could increase the chance of losing your highly veteran and experienced pilots. Very briefly, the way the weather works is that every hex belongs to a so-called climate zone. If you hover the mouse over an X, you see here climate humid, and this humid is the climate zone. And you also see here the weather conditions on the ground and in the air, which in this case is both clear. There are several um, climate zones that I've shown here. I've listed them here, but if you want to have a more let's say comprehensive view of the all of the climate zones, whoops, yeah, there we go. Here they are. So sorry, I forgot just to mention, you can click on this icon here in the info screen or press W and you will be directed to this screen. Here you see the entire map with, in this case, by selecting climate zones, you have the distribution of the climate zones within each individual hex. Now the climate zone, let's say, they dictate for 50% the weather conditions that will be present in that specific hex. The remaining 50% is dictated by the um, by the period of the year. The weather conditions, I call them general weather conditions, and they can be clear weather, rain, heavy rain, cold, or snowfall. Blizzard, I separated it from the general weather conditions because is I would call it an induced weather condition, because this is affected by other things, by that we will see in a second. Um, to have a rough idea of the general weather conditions that will be present in the hexes, you can click here, show dominating weather table. I wanted to kind of prepare it in Excel, but then I saw, okay, no, it's right here, so I don't need to waste my time. And basically, per each climate zone, you have the expected weather conditions at each specific time point of the year. In this case, because we are within the last 10 days of June, we have clear weather in nearly all of the climate zones. We just have rain in the polar climate zone, and we can see it here. We have polar. You see that here is polar, and if we click on weather air, rain, you see that here is raining. So that's kind of easy, right? Now things are getting a little bit more complicated because I'm not a meteorologist, so I hope I can explain this well. There are, besides the general weather conditions, there are things called air fronts. Even though, according to the user Dark Horse 2, they should be called air masses because the way they are implemented, let's say it's not very realistic, to be honest, apparently, and yeah. It could be improved, let's say. Yeah, it can be improved, this one. And basically, depending on the prefix C or M, they can be continental or maritime, and then you have Arctic, polar, or tropical. And the difference between continental and maritime is that the continental mimics the dry weather, the maritime mimics the humid weather. And Arctic means very, very cold, polar, very cold, and tropical, cold slash mild. So that's all what you have to know. Now, how to understand the effects that the weather fronts have on the weather of the air, that the air fronts have on the weather conditions. It took me a lot of time, but I found it. It's in the editor. We can load the let's say 1941 campaign. Yeah, I think it's fine. Yeah, so you have to go in the editor here in this sheet, nation/weather, and weather fronts. Now, don't care about these numbers here. Just care about this table here. Now, this table shows let's say the change that the weather front has on a specific hex, which means that on, let's say, the I think I found it, yeah, this one here, like the Arctic maritime front in, let's say, in January, if on an hex it was supposed to be snowfall, the presence of the Arctic maritime front will change the snowfall condition into blizzard. So you can click on here, edit shifts, and you can get an idea on how these air fronts modify the weather in the hex in which they are present. And if we just quickly go back again to the map, there is one thing that I wanted to show you that to me makes no sense, and is this one here. So I still didn't figure out what this 1 and 2. I assume they are two different fronts, but from what I've read online, these air fronts should not overlap between each other. But again, as I said, I'm not a meteorologist, so don't ask me why is this the case. I just read that they should not overlap because they don't overlap in real life. Yeah. One more thing. If you want to understand where it's raining or where it's gonna rain, always look at the letter here. If you have a high pressure front, normally you will have good weather. If you have a low pressure front, like in this one here, you're gonna have rain. I know a bit of the physics behind, but that's not the goal of this video. But briefly again, if we look at the weather air, you see here that you have this low pressure front here. It's raining, and also the weather conditions can be easily seen on the map. Whenever you have like 2 droplets, it means it's rain. If you have 4 droplets, it means it's heavy rain. And the same is true for the snowflakes. In regard to the change the appearance of mud. You will also see it here. If you see some brown dots, is light mud. If you see nearly the hex covered in brown, it's heavy mud. And in this case, I must say, I found this table in the manual very informative, because it gives you precisely in which general weather condition, what happens to the to the water, and whether the water can become snow or vice versa. And this indicates the level of water and snow that you need to have in order to have these general weather conditions. Just to show you as an example, let me quickly load one other scenario. Okay, so this is the Stalingrad to Berlin campaign, but you see here the snowflakes. You see water 8, snow 3. Always remember that the maximum of each water and snow is 9. And yeah, you see here also that heavy rain and in turn mud do have an effect on roads. And roads are very important, not only for the movement of trucks, for the supplies, or for the logistics, but also for the movement of units. And the road map can be activated by pressing this button, and you see here on the map these lines. Now, where there is no line, you see here poor roads, which means that there are basically no roads. There are these dirty, unpaved roads, typical of Russia, of the Soviet Union, which of course turn into mud when it's raining, or heavy mud when there is heavy rain. The dashed line indicates average roads, while the full line indicates good roads, like I assume these are the highways, like, because this should be the Minsk, Smolensk, and Moscow highway. Yeah, exactly, it's this one. Yeah, and again, you have to go to the editor to here I am in the editor to have this one here, the weather effects. Now, I've told you at the beginning that the weather has an effect on movement and on combat efficiency. Well, here you have it. Here you have the comprehensive table which explains you the penalty that your units have to pay when they have to enter an enemy hex, which has these ground weather conditions. And also it differentiates between motorized units and non-motorized units. And then this is the adjustment of the combat value of the attacking units when they attack an enemy in an hex containing, of course, these conditions. And just to give you an example, if you want to attack in an hex with heavy mud, the final combat value will be divided by 2 because it's multiplied by 0.5. Which means, of course, if you are in an hex with a good road, which means never attack during the season of heavy mud. And also there is the harsh winter of 1941-42, which means that in this time period, all the infantry elements which are not in a protected hex, so in hex with a urban center, or in an hex with at least a level 2 fortification, will suffer more, let's say, damaged elements during the logistics phase if they are in an hex containing blizzard. And also, if I'm not mistaken, all of the ground units have to pay an extra movement points to move in hexes with heavy snow or blizzards. and which means, of course, if you are on the Axis side and you want to avoid suffering too many losses in your manpower, you should, prepare an adequate defensive line before December comes. Yeah, because this this harsh winter lasts between December 1st until March 1st, 1941. And yeah, so I think that's all. I hope I didn't forget anything. And yeah, as always, folks, thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for supporting the channel. And well, stay tuned for more, because we're getting close to the end of this series. And yeah, we'll see you all. I'll see you all in the next tutorial.